With her stepbrother Ryan's hand resting lightly on hers, Ellie sat still in the living room while shadows were cast by the TV's gentle brightness. He said in a calm, forceful voice, "You don't have to pretend around me." She glanced at him, her heart pounding as his words took hold. "Ryan, this isn't right," she mumbled. But she couldn't stop him as he drew nearer, his breath warm against her cheek. When her mother remarried and Ryan joined their family, Ellie's entire world fell apart. He was charismatic, self-assured, and had a talent for making people laugh. Ellie initially wrote him off as simply another obnoxious sibling figure, but as the months went by, she became aware of how much he cared about her. She had seen older brothers in movies, but Ryan was different. He was different, almost too attentive. Whether it was helping her with her schoolwork, making her laugh when she was upset, catching her in quick looks when he thought no one was watching, he would always find an excuse to be close to her. Ellie dismissed it as innocuous at first, but she couldn't deny the mounting hostility between them. Ellie and Ryan were left alone at home one summer evening when their parents made the decision to go out to supper. Ryan sat down next to Ellie with a bag of popcorn while she was snuggled up on the couch, browsing through her phone. With his trademark smile, he said, "Movie night?" As he leaned over to get the remote, Ellie said, "Sure," attempting to ignore the flutter in her chest. The room was silent, save for the sound of explosions and automobile chases, as they decided on an action film. However, Ellie grew increasingly conscious of Ryan's proximity as the evening went on, his arm lying idly on the back of the couch, inches from her shoulders. Ryan turned to face her as the credits rolled, his face uncharacteristically somber. He teased, but with a hint of worry, "You've been acting strange lately." Ellie scowled. "What do you mean?" He looked into her eyes and said, "I don't know. It seems like you're trying to avoid me." She spoke rapidly, but her voice wavered. "I'm not avoiding you." Ryan cocked his head to observe her. "You may let me know if something's amiss, Ellie. You don't need to act fake with me." His words made her breath catch, and her heart began to race. "I'm all right, Ryan, actually." He didn't let it go, though. "Are you certain? Because it seems like you're omitting something." Ellie's mind was racing as she stared at him, her stomach churning. Despite the obvious tension between them, she insisted that it was nothing. As he extended his hand and touched hers, Ryan's face softened. "Ellie, you can rely on me no matter what." His unwavering gaze caused her willpower to shatter. Her voice was shaking as she murmured, "Ryan, this feels different." In a soft yet inquisitive tone, he questioned, "What does?" She gestured between them and said, "This. Us. It feels out of the ordinary." With his hand still lightly resting on hers, Ryan's jaw tensed. "I understand," he said softly. "I have also experienced it." Ellie's breath caught as his words became clear. She shook her head and replied, "Ryan, we can't." "I understand," he said, bending in closer. "However, that doesn't alter my feelings." As he got closer, his lips brushed hers in a cautious kiss, and the air between them thickened. Ellie froze, her body refusing to heed to her mind's cries for her to back off. Weeks of stress bubbled over as their inhibition broke down and the kiss deepened. Ellie's fingers got caught in Ryan's hair as his hands moved to her waist, drawing her in. Once so familiar, the living room seemed like a completely new universe, where just the two of them were there. "You're amazing," Ryan said against her lips, his voice full of passion. Ellie muttered back, "And you're insane," her breath catching as his lips moved down her neck. As they gave in to all they had been fighting to control, their connection became evident as the night unfolded in a flurry of passion. The gentle warmth of sunlight coming through the drapes roused Ellie. The weight of the previous night returned with a jolt, and her heart fell. Ryan was already awake, sitting on the edge of the couch with his head in his hands. When she sat up and looked around the living room, with a shaky voice, she murmured softly, "We need to talk." He answered in a sad voice, "I know. It can't happen again like it did last night." Ellie's chest constricted as she nodded. However, it did. "I'm not sure how to approach my parents now." With a look of remorse and resolve on his face, Ryan turned to face her. His words were, "We'll figure it out, with each other." The sound of the front door opening cut into their discourse. Ellie's mother joyfully exclaimed, "We're home! How did your evening go?" Ellie's face lit up with panic as Ryan stood up and ironed his shirt. He called back in a firm voice, It was fine. When her mother came in, Ellie attempted a grin as her eyes darted between them. Is everything all right? Of course, Ryan said with ease, yet his hand briefly touched Ellie's, sending a chill down her spine. However, as the day went on, Ellie couldn't get rid of the thought that their secret wouldn't remain secret for very long, and that the boundary they had broken was only the start of something far more intricate. With every day that went by, the burden of their shared secret increased. Every snatched glimpse and unintentional hand contact was like a jolt to Ellie's chest. She was unable to shake the recollection of that evening and how his touch had sparked an unknown emotion in her. But she was plagued by guilt, which served as a continual reminder of the boundary they had crossed. Ryan wasn't any better. His normally relaxed manner had become tense, his jokes forced, and his dealings with their parents careful and short. The air between them, however, hummed with unsaid tension when they were alone, like a taut wire about to break. A few evenings later, Ryan entered the room with a resolute expression on his face, as Ellie was seated at the dining table feigning to study. There was no space for debate as he gestured for her to follow him. The cool night air brushed over her skin as she followed him to the backyard. Her voice was a mixture of fear and fascination as she questioned, "What is it?" Ryan stated in a quiet voice, "We need to talk. This matter between us. We cannot continue to ignore it." Ellie felt a knot in her stomach. With a quivering voice, she answered, "I'm not ignoring it. What do you want me to say, though? That what transpired is acceptable to me? That I don't think I'm going crazy?" Ryan took a step forward, his eyes intense. "I'm not requesting that you accept it. I'm not even convinced that I approve of it. But Ellie, it's killing me to act like it never happened." She tried to steady herself by crossing her arms. "So Ryan, what should we do? Inform them? Set the entire family on fire?" He softened his voice and said, "I don't know. However, I am aware that you are on my mind constantly." His words lingered in the air, causing Ellie to gasp. She desired to dispute with him, to correct him, to assure him that they would never make the same mistake twice. Her resolve, however, wavered as he gazed at her as if she were the only thing keeping him grounded. "This is crazy, Ryan," she muttered, her voice shaking. "I understand," he responded, taking a step forward. "But that's the reality." He cupped her face, his touch solid and warm, before she could react. His voice was almost audible above a whisper when he whispered, "Tell me to stop, and I will." Her own feelings were at odds with one another as she searched his eyes, her heart racing. However, she leaned into his touch rather than pushing him away, and their lips met in a deep, purposeful kiss that contained all they were unable to express. Their reserves broke down as the weight of their shared emotions overcame them, and the kiss grew deeper. As Ellie's arms encircled Ryan's neck, his hands moved to her waist, drawing her in. Their refuge from the world that lurked just beyond the house was the backyard, with its peaceful darkness. Ellie whispered against his lips, "You're dangerous," her voice full of passion. Ryan answered, his breath warm against her skin, "And you're irresistible." As they succumbed to the attraction between them once more, the night descended into a cloud of passion, their bond irrefutable. A light in the home flickered on as they stood in the shade of the trees, engrossed in one another. When Ellie spotted her mother standing at the kitchen window with an enigmatic expression, she paused and felt her heart jump into her throat. She drew away and murmured urgently, "Ryan." He turned and saw their mother, his own face going pale. His voice was tight as he replied, "She saw us." Panic gripped Ellie and her chest constricted. "What are we going to do?" Ryan firmly took her hand in his. "We have to face it, together." The tension was thick enough to sever with a knife as they returned to the house. Their mother was standing behind the kitchen counter, looking confused and angry at the same time, her arms crossed. Her voice was trembling as she screamed, "Do you want to explain what I just saw?" Ellie parted her lips, but kept them shut. Ryan squared his shoulders and took a step forward. "It's not what it looked like," he said calmly at the start. Their mother shot back, her brows hardening. "Then what was it?" "Because it appeared that you two were..." Unable to complete the statement, she trailed off. After a moment of hesitation, Ryan looked at Ellie and then back at their mother. "Ellie is important to me," he remarked plainly, "more than I ought to." Ellie's mother's face contorted in surprise and incredulity. "She's your stepsister, Ryan." "I understand," he responded steadily. "And I'm aware that this is incorrect. I can't lie about my feelings, though. Ellie caught their mother's attention, and her frown softened a bit. Is this real, Ellie? Do you share my sentiments? Ellie's eyes filled with tears and her throat constricted. With her voice quivering, she said, I don't know what I feel. However, I can't ignore that. As their mother comprehended what they had spoken, the room went silent, her face displaying a mixture of sadness and betrayal. She finally let out a breath, letting her shoulders drop. She replied softly, I need time to think, before turning and leaving the room. Ellie's chest constricted as she turned to face Ryan as the door shut behind her. Now what? With a hard yet reassuring grip, he reached for her hand. No matter what, we'll work things out, together. As Ellie and Ryan stood motionless, watching their mother leave the room, the tension in the kitchen was intolerable. A deafening hush fell as the sound of her retreating footsteps reverberated throughout the home. Breathing heavily, Ellie turned to face Ryan. Her voice was shaking as she said, This is a disaster. She is aware. Can she tell her father? What if? Ryan stepped up and said, Ellie, using a stern yet composed tone, We'll take care of it. Her hands shaking, she shook her head. How? How can this be fixed? Reaching out, Ryan cupped both palms over her face. He continued quietly, his eyes unwavering. We can't undo what's happened. However, that doesn't alter my feelings for you. His comments caused her heart to race and her mind to race. This is unfair, Ryan. To her, to us. I understand, he said, his voice cracking. But Ellie, I can't let you go. Not right now. Before she had a chance to react, Ryan moved in and planted an intense, passionate kiss on her lips. Ellie's resistance was melted by the intensity of his kiss and the warmth of his touch, even while her mind was screaming for her to pull away. She trembled as she muttered, You're impossible, against his lips. He whispered back, And you're irresistible, drawing her in closer as his hands moved down to her waist. As they surrendered to the fire that had been brewing between them, their surroundings became less noticeable. As their bond grew, Ryan led her to the edge of the kitchen counter and lifted her with ease. Their intertwined shapes were highlighted by the moonlight coming through the window, and the house was filled with the sound of their frantic breaths and murmured names. They were at the height of their passion when someone in the hallway gave a quiet gasp. They both froze and snapped their heads toward the direction of the sound. Their mother was standing there, wide-eyed and motionless. Her mother's eyes flashed between them, her look a mixture of shock and grief, and Ellie's heart fell. Ellie began, her voice breaking, Mom, I. Her mother interrupted her mid-sentence by raising a hand. She whispered, her voice trembling, Don't. This is unbelievable. How long? How were you able to? Ryan took a step forward, his voice steady yet remorseful. It wasn't planned, he muttered. But it isn't what you believe. Not what I believe? Their mother retorted, raising her voice. I just noticed. Tears filled her eyes, and she stopped talking, her voice breaking. I need some time. I am unable to handle this at this time. The sound of her bedroom door slamming shut echoed throughout the home as she turned and left. The impact of what had just transpired weighed hard on Ellie and Ryan as they stood in startled silence. Now what do we do? With horror in her voice, Ellie muttered. With a tight yet comforting grip, Ryan reached for her hand. We confront it, he stated plainly, with each other. Ellie experienced an odd sense of tranquility in his company, despite the pandemonium all around them. She was aware that they couldn't reverse what had been done, no matter what happened next. However, they could choose how to proceed, regardless of how convoluted or muddy things were.